You're listening to No Plot, Only Lore, a podcast about games and the tables we play them at. Your DMs tonight and every night are Josh and Chris. You can find us on all podcast platforms or check us out at noplotonlylore.com. If you like what you hear today, please rate and review the show and share it with everyone you've ever met. Welcome back to No Plot, Only Lore, Bryn Shander's favorite podcast. You know, I've spent time recently in beautiful Bryn Shander. I gotta say, it is one of the nicest towns in a frozen hellscape you'll ever find.
What's your favorite thing about Bryn Shander?
How memorable it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The name?
Because I remembered anything about it whatsoever. We're working through a long campaign. And none of us at the table are like excellent note takers. Like, there's some note taking. I take no notes. And so my recollection of, the excuse I use is that my character died. So this new guy doesn't remember anything because he doesn't know anything because he wasn't there.
Okay.
That's how I get out of forgetting even the most basic detail. We're the mayor, like we as the party, one of us is the mayor of some town in the greater 10 towns area, which is where you'll find Bryn Shander.
Right. I'm actually looking at some of these names, and they look like they would be a lot harder to pronounce than Bryn Shander.
There's Tourmaline and
Mayor Dualden.
There's Care. I want to say Care Dunnig. There's a few.
I think that might be a real place, Josh.
No.
There's Kelvin's Cairn.
You're thinking, Kelvin's Cairn. That's one of them. There's a couple of cairns. I just called it Care Paravel the whole time because I grew up on Lion the Witch and the Wardrobe, and so that's the only one that's stuck in my head.
Loch Dinishir?
Yeah, I don't know if we've ever pronounced that correctly in our entire campaign.
I am also fairly certain that I've just mangled that name pronunciation.
Is it L-O-C-H?
No, it's L-A-C. Loch.
Oh.
Loch.
Loch
Dinishir.
I feel like most
Is it an Elven R?
It wanders. It wanders the globe on which pronunciation you're supposed to use. Because sometimes you're like, oh, well, this is definitely like it's a dwarven area and the dwarves have named it, so we should pronounce it kind of with a vaguely Scottish accent. And then you get to other parts, you're like, no, that ain't right. So, yeah, who knows? Whatever. Anyways, Bryn Shander, we've been there for sure at least one time. It might currently be on fire. We're chasing a dragon. A mechanical dragon.
Apparently, the town makes goods from scrimshaw out of the bones of knucklehead trout.
Yeah, so knucklehead trout are like a whole thing on the lake that's in this area. It's like a major economic force in the area. So we're working through that Winter Queen book. I think it's something along those lines. Rime of the Winter something. I play Dungeons and Dragons.
Cold Place Dungeon Go.
We've had lots of dungeons, and my only encounter with a dragon was fatal. So whatever.
I actually have. Okay, so my party has finally made it into space.
Hooray.
We fought off some weird fish that were not knucklehead trout. And then the campaign that I have them up against next, it's not even really a campaign, but it's just like the first encounter is going to be like an abandoned mage's tower that's floating aimlessly through space.
Okay.
And it's going to be the first time that we are in a dungeon, and the first time that they are going to meet a dragon.
Hooray! You got it all out of the way in one go.
This game has been going for many months now. And we have not been in a dungeon or fought or like encountered a dragon yet.
That's rough.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're on our second dragon. I mean, not to brag, but we've been playing this game for probably 2 years now.
Too many dragons. There's too many dragons.
It's just it's our annual dragon,
All right.
and our bi-monthly dungeon.
Did you hear anything about the guy who wrote The Last Unicorn coming out with a new book?
I don't even know what The Last Unicorn is.
Oh, The Last Unicorn was a great book, and then a cartoon made in the 80s to make children cry.
Oh, good. Does the unicorn get cancer or something?
The unicorn dies. Spoiler alert for The Last Unicorn, a cartoon that was made when I was a baby.
Yeah.
But the guy who wrote it...
50-year-old spoilers.
He put out a new book called something like I'm Afraid You've Got Dragons.
Okay.
And it's about a dragon exterminator.
Okay.
Who actually really likes dragons.
Right. So he's just like relocating dragons to the woods and using, ethical, humane capture things.
He's adopted a bunch of them, and they're like in his barn. But then princess,
honestly, not where I would store a dragon.
No, not a great place for them. But this princess meets a handsome prince from another land who's on a quest, and they need to exterminate all of the dragons in the castle because they're just lousy with dragons. They've got them in the walls, there's a bunch on the floorboards, there's dragons everywhere.
Are they small, very small dragons?
These ones are, yeah. If left unattended, they'll get huge.
Oh, I see. Okay.
These are the size of Rottweilers or whatever.
Okay.
And then more that are mouse sized or whatever. But the guy, the prince guy, is on a quest to kill a dragon to prove to his father that he's a manly man.
Of course, they always are.
So they recruit the dragon exterminator to teach him how to kill a dragon so that he can impress this princess. And it all goes to shit. And it is fantastic. And I would strongly recommend So I'm Afraid You Have Dragons.
Yeah, I'm going to check it out.
I'm pretty sure that is not the title, but I'll put the title in the description of the episode. It's good.
Good.
A book with a lot of well-balanced themes.
Well, that's good.
Just tee you up there.
Yeah. Speaking of unbalanced things, so one of the comments on our most recently uploaded podcast was about balance. Balance is, well, according to you, it's a hard thing to define and difficult to establish. I will agree with the second part. I think you could fairly safely come up with a definition of balance. I would say abstractly, it is a feeling of fairness in your game. Whether
it's the feeling part that I find is difficult to nail down.
Well, I think the feelings part is what makes it difficult to achieve balance.
Right.
Because, all of the math in the world won't make you feel like an encounter's balanced if you just cruise through it. And they're like, no, it wasn't an unbalanced encounter. You just rolled really well. They're like, no, it doesn't feel balanced. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, but it's also the feeling of unfairness. Everybody is going to feel different things are unfair.
Yeah.
They're going to feel like different things are fair or representative of fairness.
Yeah.
And so trying to establish what somebody means when they say that a game is unbalanced is tricky.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of this, I think, comes from the fact that 5th edition is getting their 5.5 soon.
Yeah, I think September.
Yeah. So it'll be out by the time that this podcast launches.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of questions about class balance that are happening right now.
Rest in peace, Paladins.
Yeah. Some questions about whether or not Rangers are OP or absolute crap now. I have seen mostly that they're absolute crap, but there's a couple of people who are like, no, the new mechanics make them good. Yeah. Druids get a couple of new abilities to make them more appealing. And so like I feel like balance is something that we see a lot more in complicated systems.
Yep.
It's something that we see a lot more in like Dungeons and Dragons than we're ever going to see in like Kids on Bikes.
Yeah. Well, and certainly like conversations about balance will happen more in more complex systems, especially like no one's going to complain about balance and like, I don't know, Kobolds Ate My Baby, right?
Entire careers.
Yeah.
Right? Like entire careers can be made by dissecting the balance of various bits and bobs of Dungeons and Dragons, like just Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
And we've seen it. There are people on YouTube who their entire thing is just like digging into like these things are horrifically overpowered and like sleeper hits and all of that shit.
Yeah. Here's a build that's making your DM cry.
Because that's the goal of every great player of Dungeons and Dragons,
to take away the DM fun cry. Of the person already having the least fun.
Oh, okay, well, slow your fucking roll there, bud.
Again, I bring nothing but spicy takes and argumentativeness to this collaboration. So
I have so much more fun DMing than I do as a player.
Interesting.
I a little bit blame neurodivergence in that it is very easy for me to get bored.
Right.
If I am just like pigeonholed into playing one character and doing one, like whatever my thing is when the spotlight is on me.
Sure.
And like waiting for a spotlight is something that drives me fucking nuts. I want to be directing it. Right. I need all the little things that are going on, so I'm like entertaining myself by making sure that the pace is kept up at a nice clip and stuff. Yeah, no, I absolutely find DMing more entertaining than playing.
So I find playing more entertaining because I enjoy being the cause of consternation, if that makes sense.
I mean, we've been making this podcast for a few months, Josh, and yes, it absolutely makes sense.
Yeah, that's too obvious, but yeah, I enjoy being a thorn in the side of mostly Keith these days. But
that's fair. That's fair. Yeah. Shout out Keith, victim of our first episode.
Who caught a drive-by when I was still in my feelings about losing my dwarf that I loved a lot.
All right, so
so balance. Balance, while hard to concretely describe for any one factor, does pop up in a lot of different areas. I mean, we talked a little bit about like statistical or character balance, but you mentioned spotlight balance, making sure that people at the table get equal opportunities to shine. And then you've got a couple here that I want you to expand on. We've got
well, first I'm going to expand on
niche actualization.
Yeah, so I want to expand on Spotlight a little bit.
Okay,
before we jump into that. And I think the reason that I want to do that is because like Spotlight balance is the one that there are so seldom rules for.
Oh, there's nothing actual mechanical that I can think of where it's like this is exactly what you're supposed to do as the Dungeon Masters.
Well, and it's so easy to see actual play content where like groups are splitting up and you have scenes that have been established for like this group of people and this group of people. A certain amount of time is being devoted to everybody, but these people are professionals.
Yep.
Right. So like if you don't get as much spotlight time over the course of an episode, you can be pretty sure that you're going to get it later on.
Yeah, it's coming.
Not necessarily true at your table.
No.
And so
there's no contractual obligations at our table to make sure that people get equal spotlight time.
Well, not everybody wants it either.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
There are a lot of players who would prefer to blend it into the background and they're just there to have fun, drink a beer. When it's their turn to contribute, they will contribute, but otherwise they just want to be left alone. Cool.
Yeah.
Right? But figuring out how spotlight balance works, because you've got a bunch of different types of players and a bunch of different types of personalities, it could really benefit from more attention in core rulebooks. right? Like I feel like there should be a section of the DMG that just talks about things like spotlight time.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, there's so many tools in there for new DMs for like making sure you don't kill the party and making sure you don't, you know, make things wildly overpowered or whatever. And no one ever asks like, hey, make sure you don't kill the fun, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Make sure that the person who is talking isn't always your girlfriend. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, Christopher.
I mean, no. I had to rein you in more than anybody else.
Sorry for being the only person in that group who had a personality.
Actually, I didn't have to rein you in more than anybody else. There've been a few players that have had to pull in a little harder. Yeah. But like, no, I think like we've all been at that table where like somebody who is DMing maybe new to the game spends a lot more time focusing on the people that they like more.
Yeah.
And as the person that nobody likes more, that really hurts my feelings. So like,
I'm sorry, I guess.
Yeah. Fuck you for being so charismatic and friendly, Josh. No, but it's like at a lot of tables, there are going to be people who want spotlight time, but they aren't able to advocate for it as well. And so you do end up in situations where the spotlight time is really uneven because there are no guidelines for how to handle that, and nobody ever really focuses on it.
Well,
so
I'll even say like my personal spotlight time varies wildly like over time. Like, you know, when I'm first starting in a group, I take a lot less spotlight time. It takes me a while to get comfortable with the group. And then it ramps up from there, you know?
I will spend an entire session like eerily quiet.
Yeah.
Because like I know that when I am playing, I can be a force.
Sure.
Right? Like it is very easy for me to slip into a place where I am suddenly leader guy. We're going to go do things. I'm driving plot. Here's all of my emotional baggage that I brought from my divorce, and we're going to deal with it in the therapy that is this dungeon.
Oh, God. Oh, that stings.
So, like, recognizing that about myself.
Yeah.
I know that it's really important for me to figure out how I'm going to mesh within the group and like figuring out the dynamics of the group, figuring out who's being more quiet. Does it seem like that person wants to contribute more, but isn't? Right?
Sure.
Does it seem like there are people who are contributing maybe a bit too much and I need to challenge them, right?
Yeah.
Have like a bit more time to bring people up. Do I need to like grab somebody into a scene with me?
Yeah.
Right, just to get some spotlight time on them, right? So like as a player, I try to be very conscientious about the way that my spotlight time is impacting my other players. But a lot of that comes from experience as a GM.
Yeah.
So not a lot of your players are going to have that, and you're going to have to be like really careful about it, especially when you're starting.
Yeah.
So niche protection.
Yeah. Let's dive into that for a minute, because I mean we can sit here and talk about like, and I do actually want to take some time to talk about like mechanical balance, but let's talk about some of these other types of balance, and then we'll back it up.
So niche protection actually does have a mechanical component. It's something that 4th edition D&D did really, really, really well.
Yeah.
You have characters who have a place in your party. They do certain things and they do them very well.
Yeah.
In a party, generally...
role.
Yeah, you have a defined role. In a party, you generally don't want to have a lot of people who are in the same niche. Right? So if you have somebody who's already like your big defendery type, then you don't necessarily need to have another one until you have the other niches filled.
Right.
And
like, I mean, you know, I'm participating in a one-shot this weekend, and I am so cognizant of this problem. Like they had a session 0 on Monday that I wasn't able to make because of the kids, but I told them like, you guys hammer out what you're going to do. I'll fill later, right? I don't really
Yeah.
care. I have ideas for just about anything. And they got back to me with, oh, we're playing a druid, a bard, and a wizard. We're all long
Oh
range spellcasters.
no.
So like
Yeah.
it's fine. It's just one night. We
Yeah.
we can like blow all of our cool abilities and just survive the day, but also that there would be some real like just mechanical problems going forward
Mm-hmm.
because they don't have a big slab of beefcake up front, which is what I am going to be.
Yeah.
I decided I'm going to make a barbarian, and I'm going with this particular version of barbarian that's very shouty,
Mm-hmm.
from a Kobold Press publication because I have a really good like Arnold Schwarzenegger noise impersonation, and so I'm just gonna shout garbage at people and charge around with a big axe. But uh, without someone like me, like yeah, you just need a body to absorb hit points worth of damage at some points, you know?
Well, and the other thing that I would maybe be concerned about is like, especially if the bard is going with a caster build,
Yeah.
you don't have anybody that's consistently putting out damage. You have a bunch of people who are inconsistently putting out damage, which is
Right.
great. You don't have anybody who's consistently putting, like, you don't even have a warlock.
So the wizard has gone with the cantrip adept build, which lets
All
them
right.
use cantrips as minor actions, a proficiency bonus number of times per day.
Right.
So hopefully he'll be pumping out a little more damage with more spells. Um,
I
he'll
don't remember
also
the exact wording on that feat, but doesn't it not get around the one spell per turn rule?
it does.
It does.
Uh, yes. So the spell per turn rule only applies to leveled spells.
Okay, so
Uh,
cantrips wouldn't
Cantrips
count.
are not leveled spells. So yeah.
Okay. Neat.
Yeah, it is neat. And then like if we were playing this because we're playing at like level 7, if we were playing
Yeah.
at a higher level, he would actually get to maximize the damage on his cantrips.
Yeah.
Which I think is neat. But yeah, damage wise, we're like, oh boy, I hope this caster druid pulls their weight, you know?
Somebody should have played a fucking warlock. Is what's up.
Well,
Like
yeah.
if you're going with a all long range caster build, then you get one warlock with Eldritch Blast,
Yeah.
and skin him like a bard, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. But that's not what's happening, so I guess good luck to me.
Does the druid have a lot of Healy spells?
I don't know. I have not seen.
Okay.
They're going. I don't know. They're going Circle of the Land, which I always thought was
Oh.
like, okay, fine, like a balanced sort of druid build because it's Moon that does all the shape shifting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I hope they heal a bunch. I don't know what to tell you. Like I'm just like in it to win it, and I guess I'll figure out the problems on Sunday.
I would tell you to buy a bunch of potions, but there's no way to do that in the DMG.
Oh, that's an entire episode of how bad the DMG is for 5th edition.
I mean, 5.5 looks like it's fixing some of that shit. But niche protection. So like the biggest thing with niche protection is that like you don't want to step on anybody's toes.
Right.
Right. So like you have the thing that you do, and you don't necessarily want other players or other characters in your game that are going to do that same thing, because that takes away the specialness of your character and the thing that you do. So if you are playing a rogue in a game and 3 other players say they also want to play rogues, that is going to turn into an interesting espionage game or a really shitty game all around.
Yeah. Yep. And that's a lot of burden for your DM to bear, to figure out how to make your terrible group composition playable, because all the stuff that comes out of the pre-built encounters and stuff, they are not balanced around like, hey, everyone did the same build, you know? They're like kind of assuming you guys went in different directions.
And there's no real way to edit your encounters, right? Like the CRs to fit that.
No.
Right? Like for having such an intricate challenge rating system, in 5th edition D&D, it's really bad at actually generating the challenge rating of a thing.
Right.
Like the inability to take into consideration things like action economy.
Yep.
Especially as you start going up in levels, right? Like the legendary actions fix a bit of that, but you don't want every encounter to have a bunch of legendary actions.
Right, because like, what are you doing? Just fighting like big named baddies every single fight? Like, you got to have dudes. Dudes don't have legendary actions.
It's minions forever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like the balance of your party and making sure that everybody is able to do something that is unique and cool.
Yeah.
It's a little bit baked into the rules, but I don't think it's baked in as neatly as it could be. And it is an important thing to keep in mind. Because, like, if everybody is able to do sneak attack and pick locks, then the one guy who is able to sneak attack and pick locks doesn't have as many opportunities to do cool stuff.
Yeah, I'm no longer the sneak attack and lock picker who gets sort of a default spotlight put on them when those things come up.
Right. And then,
yeah.
Speaking of doing cool stuff, niche actualization is when your role has a time to shine.
Right.
Right? Like the DM and the game itself have created situations that are going to make your character more useful.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to give you a chance to do something that's cool. Right? Because, like, if you take a character who, again, picks locks and does a bunch of sneaky sneaks, and you're never in a situation where either of those things is useful, again, you're going to have a bad time.
Yep.
And I don't think any of the game systems that I've read have really, like, gone into how you can do this effectively. Like, there's a few that talk about, like, giving everybody a moment of awesome. Right, like, that one thing in the entire session that they did that everybody was like, that's so fucking cool. But, like, those are hard to engineer from the DM's standpoint. Like, you never know what the cool thing is going to be. It's usually like overcoming something ridiculous that happened mid-session.
Yep.
But yeah, like having that at least in the back of your mind, right? Like, how do I let each of these players and their roles really come through and shine in the spotlight for our games is an important thing to consider.
Yeah. So let's talk about like statistical character balance for a while.
Yeah.
This is sort of a hot button issue. It has come up. Well, you know, I mentioned, you know, rest in peace Paladins. One of the major changes coming from 5.5 is the change to how Divine Smite works. It is no longer this like unique mechanism. It is now just like essentially a cantrip, a level 1 cantrip.
We've talked about that a little bit,
right?
Yeah.
That change has come about because of basically people complaining about high level builds that multi-class into Paladin, and then either I think it was multi-class into Paladin to get Divine Smite, or multi-class somewhere else enough to get extra attacks, and then start attacking multiple times per round with bonus Divine Smite on every hit, right? Yeah, it's a lot of damage. You still got to make your rolls, and you're still rolling for damage, but it could be, in theory, a lot of damage. People complain that it's not balanced at high level play. There's always been arguments.
An issue, though.
I was going to say. So that's a complaint that comes up every edition. Is but if you build this very specific way to like level 20 or 30, then you know it's just unbelievably unbalanced. They're so powerful they can kill a god. I'm like, you know what?
You remember that
at level 30? Okay.
There was a level 23, level 24 rogue build in 4th edition that could one-shot Orcus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember the one. Good for you. Like, no, for real. Like, I don't care if that's what your character does in the high epic level play. I really don't. Because a lot of things had to happen for you to get there. You still got to make your rolls. and your DM had to allow it to happen the whole way along.
Yeah.
Like at some point, your DM could just say no, and that's it. That's the end of it. You're not allowed to do that anymore. He just said nope. You're not allowed to take that combination of stuff because it's overpowered.
Okay.
But at some
that
point,
ties into
you guys made an
GM fiat,
agreement.
but we're going to talk about that later.
Yes. There's a lot of negotiation that happens at the table with whether it's like, the build I'm using and the wizard is using this Sunday come from a third-party source book. Kobold Press is not official Wizards of the Coast Dungeons and Dragons makers, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. That's a negotiation. Even some of the most broken combos, like if the DM knows it's happening, he can just say, no, you can't do that. Or he can just say some bullshit. He can just be like, oh, yeah, guess what? The AC is actually 97. Like, okay, well, you lose now.
Well, let's also note that there is a fine line between just saying, no, that can't happen, and doing that thing where, I don't like rogues, so you should build a paladin that we talked about a few episodes ago. So, limiting player choices is definitely a thing that is within the DM's purview to do.
Yeah.
But, I think the argument that is largely made for these is that you shouldn't be able to do that within the rules to begin with.
But, why not? Who cares?
Well, because my sense of fairness cares.
I understand that, but again, we've established this is just a sense. It's not a real thing. It's just feelings. You're just deep in your feelings.
Well, and okay, a fair warning to everybody. I think it's good for Josh and I to both admit that neither of us is necessarily a rules hound.
Yeah.
I don't actually know what is on my players' character sheets right now.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right? They have leveled up. They haven't told me what they took their levels in. Nobody's actually discussed it yet. The amount of things that they may have taken that are completely busted, I have no idea.
Yeah.
We're still having fun. It hasn't become a problem in the course of play. And I'm adjusting on the fly based on what I'm seeing during the play sessions. So yeah, I guess that kind of gets to the core of one of the biggest questions we have here is does mechanical balance actually matter?
And so we touched on this briefly in our pre-recording talk, but my feeling is if that's where your main concern is, then you're playing role-playing games for the wrong reason or in the wrong direction. I can understand that you don't want to feel like a game is a gimme or it's too easy or whatever. That's understandable, I guess. But at the same time, this isn't a tabletop war game. It's not a miniatures game. It's just it's really just an excuse to tell stories in a interactive way. Right?
And I hear that.
Storytelling is often a lot of exaggeration or heroic moments. It's not, storytelling isn't balanced,
Right. I hear that, but also I recognize that there are a lot of people and a lot of situations where the game is a game. And you are playing that game for whatever reason it is that you play games. And for a large number of people who play Dungeons and Dragons, it's to win. Right? They want to win the combat. They want to feel heroic and like they have done something big and potentially dangerous. There's the escapism aspect of I have all of these cool powers, and if the game isn't balanced, then those powers don't actually mean anything. So I do feel like there are aspects to role-playing games where the mechanical balance is going to play a much bigger role than the narrative balance. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. I just don't agree with it.
I don't know how many people you've played with that have a very like game-centric viewpoint on role-playing games.
Okay, so funny story, because this is like actually a conversation I had last week. Um, I do play with a person who very much there's one particular area of the game where he's very focused on optimal play, specifically when it comes to healing and how you should use healing spells.
Why
And
that?
because there is a mathematically like correct way to play with them.
Okay.
You should not be healing anyone until they fall unconscious.
Right. Because then you get
Now,
free hit points from anything lower than 0.
sure, but I have two counter arguments to that. One, it makes no fucking sense from a character perspective.
Right.
No one's gonna sit there with the ability to help their friends and watch them and like wait until they get knocked unconscious to be like, oh, I guess I should help my friend out. This is not how like relationships work, you know.
Yeah.
And then the second part is that math on maximized healing or whatever does not take into account the action economy and what the person could actually be getting accomplished when they're still, if they're able to stay up and acting longer.
Right. And
Like
also
they,
like turn economy and like are you
yeah, exactly
in the right place in the turn order to be able to execute that?
Yeah.
I was actually watching an anime and it wasn't very good. But it was like about a group of adventurers who were kind of press ganged into a guild for adventurers.
Okay.
And about halfway through the series, their healer just fucking bites it. And they have to replace him. And the person that they replace him with is very much like the person that you're talking about, where it's just like, yes, that person is obviously in a great deal of pain, but they aren't damaged enough for me to waste my healing spell yet.
Right.
And like everybody is like, you are such a fucking douche.
Well, and that's just such like a it's a psychopath's way of analyzing it. Like, oh, well, they're not like actually dead, so I don't have to worry about them, you know?
Right. But I mean, that's also, again, that separation between the game part of it and the narrative part of it, right? Like a character who sees a person that they care about in pain and has the ability to stop that pain, unless they have a great deal of experience in like combat medicine, is probably going to heal that person so that they are no longer in pain and are able to do stuff to help.
Correct. Yes.
But somebody who has a lot of combat experience, somebody who has like been in wartime scenarios and like has to do immediate battle triage, may have a more detached idea of who to help and when. And then if you remove character motivations from it and you just look at the game, what your friend is saying is absolutely the correct thing that you should be doing. Again, other than the action economy, because like once you stand up from being healed, I think you have like a bonus action that you can use, and that's it.
No, you can. So once you,
or is that just a Baldur's Gate thing?
That's Baldur's Gate. Once you recover, you can get up. You have to spend.
Getting up takes half your movement.
Yeah, half your movement's gone. You can still act normally, but obviously you're still fragile. And I also feel like that sort of sets you in this infinite loop of like, oh, well, he's back up, but he's not very healthy, so we'll just knock him back down again. And then for the rest of the fight, he's only moving at half speed. Right?
Okay, but like the mental image of that is fucking hilarious.
Oh, it's so funny.
he gets up, he like takes a couple of swings, he's still like staggering because he's like just gotten up from being unconscious near death. Somebody stabs him through the guts, he falls to the floor again, they heal him again, he does it all over again.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, it's very funny to think about, but the other part of it for me is that like it's unintuitive, right, to behave in that way. So especially when we're playing with people who like aren't seasoned dyed-in-the-wool role players. Like, yeah, maybe they have some experience. That's why they're playing a healer, but they're still like a human. Maybe they come from like video game backgrounds and stuff. Like, to like chastise them every time they go to heal their friend is really fucking annoying.
Well, and that's part of party dynamics and stuff too. It's just like, yes, I realize what I'm doing is suboptimal play, but I often choose to do things suboptimally because they make for better moments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What it has led to is us almost never casting any healing spells because the healer dies all the time first. So then the rest of us are just like, oh.
And they never actually got any healing spells off because every time they do, somebody yells at them.
Yeah, exactly.
That is hilarious. Yeah. The one that I usually see, like where people start to get anal about the game, is combat.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Nobody gives a shit about how things are done for skill checks.
Yeah.
Right. Like, if you decide to use some funky, weird ass rules on skill checks where like you can crit on a skill check or you can crit fail on a skill check or whatever the fuck you're doing, nobody bats an eye.
Yeah.
When you get into combat, everybody puts on one of those like poker visors and some sunglasses and they get real fucking serious.
Yeah.
And that's where I usually see like the gameism really turn on, right? Because it has become a miniature war game.
Right. It's gone back to its roots.
And so that's like, I can understand why mechanical balance matters to players whose main motivation is like doing cool combat stuff.
Right.
Right. Like if they want to do a lot of like fun things in a combat scenario, having the game be balanced for those combat scenarios makes a lot of sense. And when it's not, it can reduce your fun.
Right. And yeah, you're right. That is like a very specific type of player too, though. Like most of the people that I play with are like they want some sort of combination of experiences. They're not just like, oh, I just want to murder things real bad. Because those people play video games and not tabletop role-playing games.
I don't know. I have played with quite a few people who like their main thing is that they want to get into the combat. I actually have one player whose main thing is she fucking hates combat and wants nothing to do with it. So like that has been nice because it means that I'm able to like pull back on some of the combat encounters stuff. Because God, do they take a long time in D&D?
Yep, like, especially in 5th. 5th seems crazy slow compared to other editions.
Even with a lot of like optimization tools that I'm using to like keep the flow going, like one combat can take upwards of a half hour.
Well, also, like, don't you have like a giant party?
Yeah, but that's whatever.
Well, I'm just saying it does drag it out because like not trying to be mean, but like having 6, 7, 8 different people trying to think through their combat. Not everyone's a fast thinker, so every person you add in just adds more thinking time.
Think on other people's turns.
Yes. But no, they don't. They space out and they look at their phone and they play with their fidget spinner and they keep working on their Gundam. This is just me. This is just
you. And it's also
also like that
guy we played Twilight Imperium with.
Oh, right. Yeah. You shall not be named. I know I'm a fast thinker. I basically, what I do, and this happens in board games too, is at the end of my turn, I will see what's going on. I'll come up with like 3 courses of action, roughly, of like things I could do, and then I just kind of space out and let whatever the other people are going to do happen, and then I see where we wind up, and then I just pick which one of those is closest to reality.
Yeah,
which is not a terrible way to approach things, I don't think, but
most people can't do it.
I know my brain works uniquely. Like that's fine.
Yeah, they want to check out the board state and like have a bit of time to consider what the current situation is rather than like try and predict what the situation will be. And maybe that's like an experience thing too, where like when you have a lot of experience running combat, it runs fairly similar to a game of chess. Right, like you've got your standardized openings. Okay, these are the guys that are going to be moving up. Those guys in the back, they're the ones we're going to want to take care of first if we can, right? Like, it kind of boils down to a couple of basic strategy points.
Yeah.
And if it's different than that, it's usually in the setup, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're going to have, like, the people who would normally be in the back are actually far away and high above us. Cool. Yeah. That adds a layer to it that we're going to have to figure out.
Yeah.
But once you have it figured out, fidget time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, for me, I don't, it's not that I play like super aggressive characters, but like combat in D&D, I don't find particularly complicated. It's just like, hey, make the closest thing to me that is easiest to kill as dead as I can make it this turn.
It's the Bruce Lee method of like hit the closest target to you with the longest weapon that will do that effectively.
Yeah, exactly. Hit it really, really hard. And if there's something that has been beat up a lot that you can reach, you should probably try to hit that. Like, you should all try to hit the same thing over and over again until it stops moving.
My players have finally figured out focused fire.
Oh, wow. What a concept. Good job, team.
Took a minute, but we got there.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, just putting a little disc on the table that says, kill this guy is so handy.
I should absolutely. So we're moving to digital. We're going to be trying Roll20 for I fucking know. But I should absolutely make one of the minis just like a round disc that says kill this guy first.
Yeah. I mean, I was at Superstore the other day and they had a set of poker chips that was on sale for like $10. Nice. And I was like, oh, finally, because I've kind of needed a set to use for various games for a long time. And I was just like, done. Like, I'll just do this now. That's fine. And the first thing I'm going to do with it is D&D.
You can, if you go to Michael's, you can pick up a 1-inch round hole punch.
Okay.
And if you print out a sheet of character faces,
okay,
you can use that 1-inch hole punch to punch out like paper minis that you can glue or tape to your poker chips.
Oh, that's handy. Yeah. Except that will permanently deface them for my purposes.
Yeah.
Whatever. I honestly might like break up all of the different ones that I will use because I don't need like I need a set of them to use for Blood Bowl. I need a set of them to use for Dungeons and Dragons, obviously. I need another set as like just general like money, I think, for some board games. So yeah, who knows? With the number I have, I could very well just like make a set of character tokens like that. But Wizards of the Coast now sells an official one with removable stickers that you can use. So you should do that.
Yeah, I use fish rocks. I use a lot of fish rocks.
Yeah, I got a bunch of those from my Magic the Gathering days.
Yeah, they are great for just like nameless mooks.
Yeah, this is a dead man. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, you're gonna hit this guy once, and he's gonna fold like origami.
Yeah.
All right, so getting back to balance.
Yeah.
Real quick. I do think that there is a function for balance. I don't know that a lot of the people who are complaining about balance necessarily know what it is that they're pushing for.
100% not.
But like, they have that gut feeling of like, this isn't really fair.
Right.
Right? Like having paladins nerfed because of a thing that happens in high-level play doesn't feel fair to you.
That could happen in high-level play. Again, it doesn't happen on every table. It's not guaranteed. It's not like the divine will of paladins being overpowered. It's just a thing that one shitty person could do if they wanted to, I guess. Or if they thought it was cool and the DM thought it was a cool thing to do because they have to work at it for 5 years. Anyways.
Well, and that's one of the reasons that it's so hard to achieve balance, is because like the thing that you are currently railing against is a thing that other people have been pushing for, specifically because they feel like it's been ruining their games.
But like how? Like, do they just start every game at like They start every game at level 10 and then just play from there? Like,
they could.
I guess.
I mean, we started at 3 because level 1 is a horror show.
Yeah, I am in favor of starting at higher than level 1, but again, I don't go too crazy with it because, like, I don't know, there's lots of content at those levels still. Like,
yeah, we're at 6 now. Like, we've been playing for quite a few months, and we're still at 6. Running with milestone leveling.
We're at, I think, 7 in my main group.
Like, I can absolutely see this crew hitting 11, 12.
Sure, why not?
Like the problem points for paladins.
If you choose to view it that way, I
don't. I also don't choose to view it that way, but I am much more focused on narrative than I am on the game scenarios.
Yeah.
But like one of the most interesting things to me about the balance debate is that Dungeons and Dragons and every role-playing game that has a DM is inherently asymmetric.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I recall in the... Oh, what the hell was that?
I don't know. You just suddenly cut out.
I think my hub died for a second there. Now I'm going to have to edit that out.
Anyways.
But, like, I remember in... like the 90s and like the early 2000s where people almost unironically referred to the DM as God.
Oh, right.
Right, like that they are the god of this game. Which for like neurodivergent depressed Christopher was absolutely a fucking crutch. God damn.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I am your god. But like the amount of power that the DM has over the game space,
right,
is assumed to be infinite.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. Like it's all run by the social contract. All of the players can get up and leave if they decide that the DM is being a shit nozzle. But the idea is that the DM runs shit.
Yeah, he has a certain power given to him to like make sure that I don't know, things are fair, I guess, but also to rein in people because he needs to maintain like more than just the balance of the game, but the balance of the whole like association. You know?
Yeah, and it's a weird amount of authority to put in one player's hands when anybody else is concerned about balance. Like, the fact that there is one player at your table who can just say that rocks fall from the sky,
yes,
everyone dies,
yes,
is insanity. If you're then going to argue about whether or not Smite should be a spell.
Yeah, nerf DMs.
Nerf DMs. Well, and there are games that do.
Yeah, and that's fair because, you know, I have known DMs who misuse the authority because they have their own emotional issues that they need to deal with.
Way to call me out on the fucking podcast, Josh.
Not you this time. No, like there was I really wanted to give Dark Sun in 5th edition a try.
Right.
And there was one, so I searched around and there was one Discord of a guy that was like, yeah, I've done a full conversion on 5th edition Dark Sun. And I was like, cool, sounds great, sign me up. And then I talked to him one time on Discord and I was like, sign me out. Yeah, like very obviously like working through some stuff using Dungeons and Dragons and other people's time.
Okay.
Which is fine. Like, you can do that, I guess. I don't have to participate, but if you want to save the bill on therapy, I don't even think you save the bill. I think you just, like, delay the onset of that therapy bill. But
I mean, if you take all the money that you would be spending on therapy and you spend it on D&D books instead.
Supplements, yeah.
It's basically the same thing, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, that's healthy and normal.
Yeah. No, I've definitely known DMs, and like I feel like this is more endemic of the old heads,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like people who grew up in the 90s or the 80s or the 70s playing these games have a very different expectation about the power dynamic that you're going to be playing with. Where like in this day and age of role-playing games, there's a lot more altruism. There's a lot more like, we're building a collaborative story. Back in the day, it was like, I'm your fucking enemy.
Yeah, it was super antagonistic.
Yeah. And again, like, all the power was in the DM's hands. Yeah. They had the ability to make anything happen. So, like, I'm a big fan of GM-less games.
Uh-huh.
I like that there are games out there that you just don't have that power dynamic.
Okay.
Right. One of my favorites is Fiasco, where you just like pick a couple of people. Those are the people that are in your scene. This is what I'm trying to accomplish, and then they decide how or why they're going to be involved in that.
Or if, or just how or
why? It's how or why, because the like system for recruitment into scenes is just like you choose the players.
I see.
And then you're in that scene.
Okay. Whatever.
Yeah. But like that is as far as the power dynamic goes. And then 2 turns later, if they decided that they didn't actually want to be in that scene and you were kind of a dick for putting them into it, then they just don't have to pick you.
Okay.
You're never in a scene with them again.
Bye.
Right? And I like redefining those power dynamics because they do represent to me a greater amount of fairness.
Okay.
They also represent to me a greater amount of boredom because, again, I have a lot more fun playing as a DM than I do as a player.
Right.
So I don't play them as often as I would like to because they do make me a little bored.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a weird trade-off to make there.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
But then there's also like low DM games.
Describe to me a low DM game.
So a low DM game would be a game where you have somebody who has an amount of narrative control.
Okay.
Most of the time.
Okay.
And sometimes that narrative control is passed to individual players or the group of players.
I see.
And it's like baked into the system that occasionally the DM is going to put their hands up and go, you guys are in control of this now.
Okay.
And I really like that.
Please.
Examples of games?
Yeah.
Shit. I did not do homework.
Wow. So you're just declaring that this thing exists with no proof.
Yep.
All right.
I'm basically one of those Pizzagate people, but for role-playing games.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways you could have gone with that example. I'm glad you chose Pizzagate.
Shit, trying to think of like one that actually has that built into it, and what I'm mostly coming up with right now is DM-less games.
Okay.
Just drawing a bit of a blank, but I have seen it in a few places where it's just like there was a token that the players could spend, and when they spent it, they gained DM fiat.
Okay.
For like a little bit.
Yeah, an amount of time.
And it was like honestly less than I would have liked. Like the way that it was built into the system, I want to say it was like a 7th C or something. I remember it being involved.
It could be.
There were pirates. There were pirates involved.
Okay.
But the amount of fiat that you got for cashing in whatever it was that you had done to get that was very limited in its scope. And I have seen some discussions more than actual games where that had been expanded, and I would like to see more of that.
Okay.
And then the last balance thing that I want to talk about is the tyranny of fortune.
Yeah.
Sometimes Sometimes the game isn't unbalanced. Sometimes you just rolled real bad.
Yeah. That does just happen.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing you can do about it.
And like the emotional response to it, like I fucking get it. My dad is one of those guys that will say unironically, this game cheats. When playing video games, if he is not getting through the thing that he wants to get through, if he is not getting the result that he is expecting, the game is fucking cheating. It is not a skill issue.
Okay, but the game might be cheating.
The game might be cheating. It probably isn't.
Yeah.
Like
there are games that cheat. Don't get me wrong. There are 100% games that cheat.
Literally every one-armed bandit.
Yeah. Well, okay, yeah, that is one extreme example. But like, if you have ever played video games and you think there's no way I should be winning, like, no, you're right. You should be winning, but the game wants to create a sense of, I don't know, challenge. Sometimes, so it'll just rubber band things close to you, and that happens. I mean, yeah, sometimes luck doesn't work in your favor, and you don't roll higher than a 7 all night.
And your friend rolls nothing but 18s, 19s, and 20s.
Yeah.
And so it looks an awful lot like your paladin is super unbalanced, when really your paladin has just been rolling real good.
Well, this is what I alluded to earlier. Like, there's no amount of math that can make bad rolls, like, impossible in an actually balanced game. Like, excuse me. In a game that is actually balanced, there should be somewhat equal probability of failure. And I know that sucks to hear, but you don't always win. And that makes it's what makes things interesting, is that there's, the chance of losing.
It's one of the reasons that I have in the past, not on this podcast, but just in like forums and stuff, advocated for playing cards instead of dice. Because as you play through your deck, assuming that you are discarding the cards and not just putting them on the bottom, your chances of reaching whatever you haven't been throwing so far, like whatever numbers you haven't achieved thus far, increase.
Yeah.
Right. So it has an inherent balance in it, in that if you pull a shitty hand and you get like 4 or 5 really bad cards right off the hop, you now have a greater chance of pulling something better.
Yeah. You know the good stuff's on the way.
Yeah. Where with dice, you got a 1 in 20 chance every time you roll that die.
You've never played Gloomhaven, have you?
No, I don't think I have.
I mean, as much as Gloomhaven is a board game, a legacy board game, it is in a lot of ways just a different version of a role-playing game. It's a lot more like structured and a very it's almost like playing through a campaign book, with a little more guide rails on it, but they use a card-based, deck-based system. And so does I'm sure you never investigated the Thornwatch RPG that they made?
No, I didn't. I found that the focus on people that weren't the young'uns made it less appealing.
Yeah, they did not realize what the actual appeal of that product was. But anyways, it also used a card-based system that would put like wounds into your deck that you could just draw a handful of bad cards because you've been wounded, right? But you knew that your good stuff was still in there.
I just really need Penny Arcade to put out like a book about Boy Scouts in D&D.
Yeah, everyone loves the Lookouts. It's fine.
Lookouts are great. Daughters of the Eyrie were fine. Don't age them. Just fucking let them be kids, because that was so much more compelling than whatever else they were doing. Anyway, no, cards. Cards are great.
Love the idea of an actual child having to fight like a cockatrice or something. Like,
well, yeah, and like there is a certain amount of like world building sense that makes. Right?
Yeah.
Like you live in a world where dangers lurk in the woods.
Yes.
But you still have to live near the woods.
Yeah, there's no getting away from the woods. You just have to learn how to live with it and the effects of it.
And how do you teach your children how to deal with what's in the woods?
Yeah.
Right? And it's that there's something incredibly compelling about that, because like you're going to lose some kids. That there is no way around it. You are going to lose some kids if you have to go and fight, I don't know, a fucking bullet.
Well, and it's just it's a reality of what's going to happen in your lives if you live in a world where these things can attack your village. Like, you're going to lose some people to dumb creatures of fantasy, because that's the world you live in. Like, and well, what's funny is like it's a lot of the same life lessons that I had to instill in my kids living near a Jehovah's Witness church.
See, I was going to talk about how, like, one of the weird life lessons that I didn't expect to have to teach my son was, like, no, we never invite the Fae into our home.
Yeah.
And there are some weird parallels there.
It's the exact same thing. Don't open the door. Don't invite them in, whether it's JWs or vampires.
Hey, thanks for making it all the way through this episode of No Plot Only Lore. If you're looking for more, you can always find us at noplotonlylore.com and on all the very best podcast platforms. If you like what you heard today, please share, rate, and review the show to feed my never-ending need for attention and validation.